Hello, and welcome to the Kickstart Your Confidence 21-Day Global Summit. We would like to welcome you and let you know that we will begin shortly. We are live from Victoria, BC, Canada. Let us know where you're attending from in the comments. We also wanted to share our content note with you and remind folks that the information that is provided herein is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This information is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease, but to inform you, the participant, of alternative methods for healing. In all health-related situations, qualified healthcare professionals should always be consulted. Some of our experts are doctors, naturopaths, and other medical professionals. However, you are encouraged to consult your own healthcare professional. In other words, no doctor-patient relationship is informed or suggested at any time during the series. Please also keep in mind that the host finds a lot of information from credible third parties and shares it here in this online forum when it is relevant. By participating in this online event, you acknowledge and agree that the third-party content is not created by the host and is shared with you, the participant, for educational, entertainment, and informational purposes only. And in no way do they guarantee a pledge or endorsement by the host for you, the participant, to take action on what the third party suggests or recommend on their sites or in their interviews. Please understand that this event provides general information only and is never a substitute for professional and medical advice. Most importantly, please consult your healthcare provider if you suspect a serious health concern. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your condition. Your health is your wealth. Don't delay in taking the proper steps in saving your life. By the same token, we are also not providing any financial advice during this series. A summit, online forum, workshop, event is meant to inform. Taking action for your own health, finances, and life is meant to create change. Never disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or read that was shared during the online summit. Our platform provides an open and safer space for the critical and civil exchange of ideas that aren't often talked about when it comes to menopause and aging. Some content in this series will include topics and themes that some viewers may find difficult. We will always do our best to give you a proper heads up to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally beforehand. Before we begin today's conversation, we'd like to inform you that this piece briefly contains potentially sensitive material regarding suicide and depression, and we acknowledge the themes may be difficult for some viewers at this time. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome and enjoy today's show. We're glad to have you. Welcome to Kickstart Your Confidence. Learn useful secrets to manage and prepare for a happy menopause without breaking a sweat, losing sleep, or opportunity. My name is Tira Green, and today I am speaking with Soma Ghosh. Soma is a career advisor, and she is the career happiness mentor. She used to be, in her previous life, in the education system, working with youth to help them with career counseling, career advice, and helping them with job hunting. And now she's really all about helping to motivate women to find their dream job, their dream careers, and to really understand what the idea of career happiness means for them. She is the founder and the CEO, the host of the Career Happiness podcast since 2019. And also, she loves to talk about things such as that really touch the heart of women, like anxiety at work, workplace bullying, confidence, and of course, well-being at work. So welcome to Soma.
Hi. It's lovely to be here.
I'm so happy to have you and to see you. And I know that we have so much that we can talk about as far as career, but I want to just first talk about this concept around career confidence. Do you want to just talk to us a little bit about that?
Career confidence. Yeah. With career confidence, I mean, I could probably fill out the whole of our discussion around career confidence. But in terms of career confidence, what specifically do you think will be helpful for me to share in kind of today's kind of summit? Please do kind of highlight a little bit more about what you think would help.
Yeah, I think for all of our women who are, going through our menopause stages, just to share some insights around what it means to have career confidence. Like, what does that even mean to begin with?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I mean, obviously we've got confidence as a whole, but when we're talking about career confidence, it's much more around the kind of actions and the things that we do within our career to maybe move us forward. Or suppose you have a setback. So for example, a lot of the setbacks that I have with the clients that I'm working with is they go through redundancy. And especially now, if we kind of link that to menopausal stuff, often in the workplace now, I mean, I don't know what it's like in Canada and in the UK, sorry, in America, but I often think that the main thing around career confidence, a lot of it is to do with having intentions of understanding what you want, firstly, right? And for most part, that changes as we grow older. So when we're in our 20s, we want one thing. When we're in our 30s, we want another thing. And then we're going into our 40s, we want another thing. And that tends to be the kind of perimenopausal stage. So I'm in my late 30s, going into 40. I'm going to be 40 this year. And this is the stage where I see women seeking out more. So suppose they're a mother, and they've got 2 young kids, and they're really, really happy with the progress they've kind of made in their career. But actually, they've decided that they want to change their career, or they've decided that actually something is beckoning them to start a business. But if they've been in this mother role and they've been in this job, which has been same every day, like Groundhog Day, then what tends to happen, I find, when I'm working with them, is that they, especially with everything that's happened, like, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, this pattern of actually allowing themselves to really, really go after what they want. But in a nutshell, career confidence is about seeking out those opportunities that you want, not only in your career, but in your life. That's what I would say in a nutshell, because I don't want to go too deep.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know a lot of folks right now might not be having career confidence because, I mean, for example, let's just take the United States. They've been having bankruptcies and layoffs and
Yeah.
the I word inflation and the R word recession,
Yeah.
and just all these things. So when you're talking to someone who's in flux and maybe not having as much confidence, what can you say to them?
Yeah, and this really comes up a lot, because I think with a lot of the women, what I say to them and what I advise them is I advise them to firstly look at not only what they want, but where they want to go. So I think for a lot of the people who are struggling with some of those things, I mean, we're going through a global crisis right now that we can't we can't, stay away from that. But often the kind of advice that I try to give to women is to look at not only what makes them happy, but also what allows them to go on to their next step. So I've mentioned career change. For many women, I'm working with a lot of clients right now who actually just want a job change because their job is not fulfilling them. It's not making them happy. And a lot of the reason behind why it's not making them happy is because they're working in a toxic working environment, or they're working in an environment which is not allowing them to work flexibly. So here in the UK, and I've discussed this on the podcast a lot, not just on solo episodes, but with guests, most people are kind of going back to the office, and some people still want that flexibility. They still want, to be working from home. But for others, they're not doing that. And I think the kind of advice that I give it is bespoke. It's different for each client because every client is different. But essentially, the kind of advice I'm giving them to not only be confident and thrive and not worry about these things, because the anxiety comes
Yeah.
from these things, it's the overthinking. And we're human beings, we're complex beings. But because I have this psychology background, what I try and do as well is I try and ask them, is there anything else going on in their life? What is actually happening? Because sometimes there are other personal things which come up, which are not allowing them to actually thrive and fulfill the needs of what they want. But the main kind of advice is I say to them, if they're sometimes not in a position to work with me, to listen to podcasts, to go and listen to summits like this, and to go and actually understand that in order for them to change where they are right now, they need to be able to start taking some small steps. And sometimes that requires them working with someone like me. Sometimes that requires them really understanding what they want. And that's a journey, that's a process that doesn't happen in one day. It can be a year, it can be 2 years, but there's lots of different scenarios. And I just wanted to build up a picture with some of the examples I've just shared there. Yeah.
Wonderful. And one thing that really stood out to me, so I know that you have a background, I think, in psychology, criminology, but then when it comes to anxiety, that's a big thing that a lot of folks, I mean, men, women, everyone is, have a little bit of anxiety. So when it comes to anxiety in the workplace, how can you help pour into someone to, I don't know, kind of release some of that or embrace it so that they can feel better in their workplace that they are in? What can you say around that?
Yeah, well, I've suffered from anxiety myself. So,
Yeah.
me being the example of going through anxiety in the workplace, some of the things that I say to them, and this is going to seem like an obvious one, but I'm going to share it anyway because I think it's helpful, especially because this summit is covering so many things, is to try and carve out some time to meditate. I cannot say enough how much meditation plays a role in our everyday stress, our anxiety. I've recently just recorded a podcast that's just gone out with the yoga teacher, and we were talking about why meditation helps with anxiety, why it helps with stress. So that's one thing I would advise: look into meditation. And don't be scared of it, because often people find it a bit scary, a bit woo-woo, and it's not as woo-woo as you think. You just need to explore what suits you. The second thing I would say is that if you're in a position where your anxiety is turning into depression, please go seek counseling, go and talk to a professional, because you will then be able to seek out what type of therapy, whether it be CBT, etc., is going to help you. And the other thing I say is think about journaling, keeping a thought journal when your triggers or your feelings come up, because we all have triggers that cause us anxiety more than others. So if in the workplace, sometimes the workload is that there's a big deadline coming up and that's causing you anxiety, what can you do to talk to your manager or somebody to try and work together so that anxiousness is not as much there? And how can you express one-to-one when you're having manager meetings, that this is something that comes up for me? What kind of support do you guys have in place? So also talking to your company about it as well. But those are kind of three things that I would say to kind of start off to help anyone with anxiety. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's funny. I think in 2012, my good friend, he's an astrologer. He's a famous astrologer on YouTube. And he was like, okay, start meditating. So I started meditating, and I had my journal and I would just meditate. And then I was just like, I remember the first things I put in there in my journal was like, excuse my French, this poop doesn't work. That was what my journal said. And now here we are years later, and even before this interview, I I sit down, and even if it's 2 minutes, I get into my breathing, I meditate, and I set an intention. So what you said, it just really does help with the anxiety. I mean, I
Yeah.
know, like you said, it might seem a little woo woo or out there, but it really does help, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I find even going for a mindful walk, if you find the meditation like too scary to begin with, go for a mindful walk, 5-10 minutes, if that's all you can do in your day. And when I mean mindful, no music, nothing, just walking. And that people can seem quite intense, but that helps me as well. And I know it's helped my clients as well when I've recommended that. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, what I've been learning too is that the brain loves movement. And so, if you're going through menopause symptoms and you're dealing with the condition, just
Yeah.
sometimes a little bit, if you are able-bodied, of course, obviously, to be able to go for the walk. And not only does it help with the anxiety, but it really gives a little bit of physical activity so that your brain can kind of do its thing, right? And just
Yeah.
function a little bit better. So that's really good tips. So on that same topic, when we're talking about like mental health and well-being, what is the importance of that in your career? Like, why do you feel like that is so important, especially more than ever now, to have that level of awareness in your career?
It's a very, very good question. I think when I my career sessions with professional women, I find this pattern that comes up. They tell me that they come with me with a career problem, new job, new career, do this, do that. And then when we kind of get to the crap of where the barriers are and what's holding them back, oh, I don't have enough time in the day. Oh, I'm stressed. I'm balancing being a single mum and, working so many hours. And so what weirdly happens is well-being comes up in pretty much every conversation I have, inadvertently. And I think, and especially now more than ever, is after the pandemic, what I tended to notice, only were they talking about it, but more people were leaving their jobs. There was this great recession that happened, and that really, sorry, the great resignation that happened. And then when the great resignation happened, there were more and more people actually in their mental health and better work practices. So I mentioned the flexibility as one thing. The other thing is that I've been seeing a lot more people have been, talking about their health openly and saying, actually, with my mental health, if somebody has passed away through suicide in their family, they are actually raising awareness behind that. And if we leave more people who have been stressed out in their work post-pandemic, and so there's almost been like this weird tidal wave that has happened, I've noticed. And more than ever, I just see, because I hang out on LinkedIn a lot for my work, I see so many of us talking about it, and it is important and it is essential, because more workplaces are striving for well-being practices, and these well-being days, I mean, as well-meaning as they are, not doing enough. It's something that has to be incorporated into our workspace. So I feel like the pandemic has actually changed mental health and well-being overall. I mean, that's just my perspective, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and I love that the dialogue is not as taboo to speak about that. I mean, just even, in the sports workplace, right? There's folks that have to go and put on their suits or like swimming suits or their uniforms, their gear. They're now saying, you know what, I need to take a step back because my mental health is not on par with where I think it should be, right? So I think that's really, I mean, that's a nice shift, because I remember back in the day, in the 90s, if you were having mental stress, and just mental illness, it was like, don't talk about it. And now it's more like, okay, I'm going to talk about it. And then there is a shift. And so in all workplaces. So do you feel like if someone is, having a mental health struggle, or if they're just really wanting to have more well-being, do you feel like, if they're feeling kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should talk about this, do you feel like it's okay for them to talk about it, or do you still think there is jeopardy of, being fired or that kind of thing, that they should be worried about?
It depends on the individual and the kind of organization they work in, is firstly what I would say. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the people, bigger organizations, that they do feel a little bit more scared to go and to, not necessarily their main line manager. They can go and have a conversation with their main line manager, but they may not necessarily share it on social media and talk about it in that way. I think what has happened is, I do agree with you in terms of more people are talking about it, and that's really, really great. But what I still think needs to shift and needs to really, really change is that stigma, that shame, usually comes from the way that we've been brought up. So I come from a South Asian family, and with South Asian backgrounds and other backgrounds, there is still a stigma around mental health. So you can't even, sometimes people don't even know, they don't even tell their parents or close family that they're going through mental health. And actually, sometimes if that's a genetic thing because of intergenerational trauma like that, then there's this really, really weird pattern that comes from that. And so I really do think that things are, but I think also in the younger generation, the Gen Zers, because I work with teenagers as well, they are much more open. And I think hopefully through time, we will see in the next generation things shift. But at the moment, I feel like there's still maybe a tiny bit more to go, and it depends on the individual and where they've come from as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair, 100%. And I happen to be a mom of I think he's a generation alpha. And, it's so funny because he just turned 5, but when he was 4, I mean, we've been talking to him about feelings and emotions since he was like 2, when he could really start to read books and understand or like
Oh,
grasp concepts. But the other day he was just like, when I was doing this summit, he's like, Mom, when you're, sometimes I just feel like when you're so busy, I feel left out. And it's just like, oh, okay. So I hear that. Like, first of all, thank you for sharing your feelings, for being comfortable to say that. And also, I hear, okay, yeah, this has been a lot of work, and I had to remind him, like, this is just me just doing this bigger thing, but it's just temporary. But I think having that dialogue and hopefully, yeah, like you said, the generations will all learn from each other to just be more forthcoming and less taboo so that, all spaces, workspaces and otherwise, we can all just connect. So,
yeah.
when it comes to like connecting and, finding a way to speak openly and candidly, that gets into career happiness. So,
Mm.
how do you find and discover your career happiness?
This is a very good question. It's a deep question. I love this question. In terms of finding like career happiness, I really, really think it's about finding out what you love. I can't go on and on about that enough. And sometimes that does not happen in the way that we think. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. Sometimes people train, or they train as an accountant, or they train as a hairdresser, whatever career it is. All careers are wonderful. No less than the other, in my opinion. And I say this as a careers advisor. But I also think that in order for you to find your career happiness, you be able to do different things. So what I mean is, if that means road testing a few different types of careers and doing things a little bit differently, then do that. Great, until you find what you love. If it means having a portfolio career, so in a way, although I'm a business owner, I would say I have a portfolio career. So because not only am I a business owner, I do freelance work as well because I love the combination and the flexibility and just doing a little bit of other things. But a portfolio career in a nutshell is maybe if you were working, let's say, as a doctor, and then you had your own cooking business, let's just say, right? So having a combination of 2 or 3 different careers. Career happiness could mean for you to go out and seek starting something and changing your career, going into an industry where you have the skills. So if you've recently, I did an episode about performing arts. And one of the reasons I did that episode is because there are a lot of people with performing arts backgrounds who then go into teaching and then they go into other things. So a lot of the time when people do degrees or study things, often it's like, oh, but you didn't, go into geography or do this. But you can utilize your skills in so many different ways. So for me, career happiness is about seeking out the things that light you up. And if you still haven't found it, maybe in your 40s or 30s, carry on experimenting, look at what you can do. Don't see it as, oh, that's it, because, some people change their careers in their 50s and 60s. So I honestly think that it's about you also being open-minded to what's out there and to just keep on exploring. But that's what I would say in a nutshell it is. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I know. And a lot of folks, I mean, I went to school for music and I've
Um,
been doing music, right? Whether it's been teaching it or doing it for 19 years as an award-winning DJ. But then I also went back to study for health coaching. And so, I find that, like, yeah, like you said, to have different kind of fingers and different tentacles, because then you can really find like where your groove is, I guess. And so for someone who's maybe thinking, okay, like maybe career isn't my thing, like, do you feel like where do you say to those folks who are like, okay, I'm looking for career happiness, but I'm not happy in a career, like what do you say to that?
mm, I mean, I think it depends. There are some people who are really entrepreneurial who want to start a business. And for those folk, I do try and encourage them to look at business as well. But I've had a few clients recently who they are actually going off to study things and they're interested in business, but they also have career aspirations in certain things. So it also depends on where you want to take you. So you kind of have to be a bit adventurous, is what I would say. And if you really, really want to start a business, I mean, you're a business owner as well. I know you can probably vouch for this. a business isn't something that you do one day and then the next day you're like, I'm not going to do it. It's a long roadmap. It's a yellow brick road. Sorry to use the analogy from Wizard of Oz, but I'm going to because I love using that analogy. It's something that you pick because it's a long road ahead and you've signed up to it, and I mean, I'm not a parent, but for example, when someone decides to become a parent or is a parent, you can't just stop being a parent, can you? That's how I see a business. I see a business as a baby, as something that you nurture. So for those people who aren't interested in maybe traditional careers or conventional careers, it's about looking at it in the long term. And you can change it up, you can tweak it. There's no harm in doing any of that. Of course you can. But I often think some of the careers advice that is out there that's often very rigid, and flexibility and the openness and the exploring needs to be put out there more. And we need to stop guilting people into changing whatever their age, because the more we do that, the more people don't change. And I did a whole episode around why people don't change for that reason, because we as a society guilt people into it not changing.
Have you found that a lot with the clients that you work with, that they have a lot of guilt or shame around, just, and so therefore they stay stuck in wherever they are?
And some of that is also to do with financial reasons as well, because we as a society, we've got to pay our mortgage, bills, etc.
Yep.
So, and especially now in these current times, what happens is that some people, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I know I need to pay the bills and stuff, so I'd really love to change. And then they put it off and off and off. And there's a lot of cynicism around career change. So I do see it sometimes with my clients, where I really do. But it's usually the people who are the action takers and the people that are stubborn, like myself, in a good way, that don't let that negativity get to them and will steadfast continue. Yeah.
Fair. And so the Great Resignation, do you feel like that's a positive thing for the workforce at large, especially like menopausal women, or where's your stance on the Great Resignation?
It's a great question. I think it can be positive and it can be negative, because I think some companies are a little bit alarmed by the Great Resignation. I'm going to be honest with you. I think they a little bit like, and some companies don't care, because if they're huge corporates, that nobody's gonna like be that bothered about it. I think it's positive in the way that women are building more of those portfolio careers, and they're saying yes to themselves and then putting themselves first. So it's positive in that way. The way where maybe perhaps not so positive is that a lot of the time, some people, I remember reading an article about this, actually, I can't remember where it was now, where people were kind of jumping on the bandwagon and doing it just randomly because they were unhappy at work, and they didn't have, I'm not saying that you need to have a plan, but there wasn't anything like lined up. And so what was happening there is there was a sense of panic and a sense of, oh, what do I do now? Oops. So there's definitely some good and bad points behind it. But what I love about it the most is that people are embracing what they really like. So almost they're going on their journey of career happiness in an authentic way, is what I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right on. And so I'm just very curious too, as well, when it comes to everyone who is just trying to find themselves in general, what can you say to that as far as just happiness in general? Because I think, like confidence is one of the components that you speak about, right? So what can you say to that?
I think finding happiness in itself is about finding out who you are. I mean, as I said, I'm entering into my 40s this year. And I think when I was in my 20s, I was really clueless about a lot of things, I'll be honest. And then I entered into my 30s and I really, really understood more about what I wanted. But it's about having an understanding about what your values are. And when I'm talking about your values, I'm not talking about anyone else's values, your individual values. So for me, my individual values are kindness, honesty, trust, those things. They're really, really important to me. And you need to know what your personal ones are in your life. And then you may have your own career values, right? And, blend that in with your happiness. But also it's about really, really understanding what you want in life. Do you want to have kids? Do you want to be married? Do you want to buy a house? What is it that you want? Because just because our society dictates and says that we must do this or we must do that doesn't mean it's going to make us happy. So you also got to look at that, and also surround yourself with people that light you up, who are your people. And what I mean by that is going to be for us. And that's okay. That's fine. But just surround yourself with maybe 5 or 6 people who are your true friends, who will always look out for you. And that brings you happiness, because when you spend time with them, you know, you're never going to get bored of your life. You're always going to have good people in your life. But those are some of the things that I would say. Yeah.
Lovely. And when you like just want to sum up your message, you know, and just to really just say, like, this is the one thing that I really want someone who's listening to this to take away from this, what would that be?
I guess the one thing that I would really, really say to kind of sum up, I guess, is that I really, really feel that everybody should embrace who they are. So what I mean by that is, for me, for the longest possible time, and, you know, I mentioned to you before when we spoke previously, I was bullied at work. And when that happened to me, I wasn't being true to myself in that particular workplace. I was kind of hiding my personality a lot. And I think I did that because I felt like I had to fit into a particular puzzle piece. And we all do that. We all do that. So my one message would be to be yourself, to be who you are, not who other people want you to be. Because when you start being true to yourself, that's when people resonate with you. And I feel, especially for us brown women and people from ethnic minorities, we tend to hide who we are because we tend to be people pleasers. And I really, really just hope for women in general that we stop trying to please people and we start trying to embrace who we are and who we really want to be. That's what I would say.
What a great message. I mean, I think that was something I needed to hear too, you know, and definitely I feel like we as a collective whole, as women, we definitely, you know, we're caregivers, right? We're always doing for others and everyone besides ourselves first. But I think it really needs to be a shift to, okay, especially during this menopause transition, okay, how is this going to benefit my well-being? How is this going to help lift me up? Because I feel like if we are depleted, you know, if we don't have the energy or the vitality, how can we even begin to think about everyone else, right? So, you know, I think what you said is just so, yeah, it hits my heart. So where can people connect with you, and how can they just get involved with maybe some of your coaching or mentorship?
So you can mainly connect with me. I'm on Instagram, but I'm kind of like not as active on there. But mainly you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's just Soma Ghosh, and there's only a few of us, and you'll be able to see me on there anyway, pretty visible. But you can visit me on my website, www.somagosh.com. And of course, you can listen to my podcast, the Career Happiness podcast, as well. But those are the main ways that you can connect with me. And I would love to hear from anyone who really, really has resonated with what I've said today. Yeah.
Fantastic. And just as just to note, do you still work with youth, if anyone has, like, you know, teenagers or youth that they are connected with?
So the way that I work with teenagers, I work with the parents of the teenagers, and then I do have a service that is targeted to work with a young person. But usually the parent of the teenager will look at my website. I've got a whole section just for parents of teens, and they will then decide whether or not they want me to do a careers advice interview with their child. But yeah, I do have something for young people as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just very curious because I know some folks, you know, they're starting to become empty nesters, but some folks, you know, they might have that Gen Zer who is, you know, rambunctious and they want to help guide a little bit. So that's good to know. So that way, you know, folks can have that resource as well. So that is for me, all I wanted to say. But is there anything, one last thing that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Just if you are exploring career happiness and trying to be, you know, happier at work, just do it in a way that really aligns with you. That's the last thing I want to say. Yeah.
Alignment. That is Yes, 100%. I agree. Well, thank you so much to Soma Ghosh. I really appreciate you for coming on, spending a little bit of time with us. And so hopefully this will help someone have a little bit more of career happiness or at least find their pathway towards that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. See you later.
Thank you.